Good morning, everyone, in St. Margaret's and in the Rabbit Hutch and in Moshi and in here and there all around the world. This morning we're thinking again about the book of Ruth. We left Ruth and Naomi on the plains of Moab, about to up stakes and head off back to Bethlehem. I suppose that's a place that many people have visited. I remember my first visit there. I went on an old ramshackle Arab bus and bumped and jolted all the way to Bethlehem, perhaps 40 years ago now, and sat down in a lovely leafy courtyard and enjoyed mint tea for the first time, and also went out to the shepherd's fields and saw the Shephelah, the rolling hill country stretching away out to the horizon, and heard the sounds of the Arab boys shouting to one another, and the sound saw the sheep and heard the sounds of their bells round their neck tinkling most beautifully, and of course also visited the Church of the Nativity, the site which is traditionally ascribed to the birth of Jesus. But we're thinking this morning of another visit, not of course the famous occasion 2,000 years ago, but the account of Ruth and Naomi 3,000 years ago, before the birth even of King David. When at last they arrived in the town, it was abuzz with interest and with talk and with speculation and with gossip in the way that villages are. Have you heard the news? Oh, what news? Naomi is back. Naomi? Yes, remember Naomi, she and Elimelech left to go to Moab 10 years ago. Oh yes, how is Elimelech? He's dead. What about the boys? They are dead too. Oh, poor Naomi. And Naomi finds herself amongst the women, the centre of attention, but also physically and emotionally exhausted. Perhaps when she had left, she was overconfident, but coming back, she seems almost cynical. It's sad when we go from overconfidence to cynicism, but I think she is simply at the end of her rope, at the end of her tether. She cannot go one more step. There are times in our lives when we simply need supported, we need carried, we need help. And that was Naomi's situation. But the main thing was that she was home. Now she was in the right place. But hers weren't the only eyes to see Bethlehem. There were also the younger and stronger eyes of Ruth. Now, as we saw last week, she had taken a tremendous step of faith, a step into life, a step into adventure, a step towards a new country and a new experience. She was being swept along by the current of life, which I'm sure we've all felt in various ways and at various times. It's always interesting going to another country. I remember when I arrived in Sri Lanka and my eyes were popping out of my head at all the strange strange sights round about me, and smelling the strange smells and hearing the strange sounds and enjoying enormously the stimulation and the fascination of Asia. Many of us will have been the same when we arrived in Africa, and Africans the same when they go to Europe or America. I remember the light in Ella Grania's eyes telling us about the stimulation of the United States when she visited. So Ruth is deeply interested in all that is happening. But not only have these women arrived at the right place, they've also arrived at the right time, the beginning of the barley harvest. It's a marvellous thing to be in the right place and in the right time in God's purposes. And Ruth looks around at the breeze blowing over the barley, which is ripe for harvest, and she feels something of health and happiness entering her bones through that good land, a land which flows with milk and honey. If Naomi has been obsessed with looking back, Ruth is looking forward to a new and hopeful future, an unknown future. Now, the story doesn't tell us where they slept the night when they arrived, but one can imagine perhaps they found their way back to an old family property, long neglected. And soon Ruth was out with the broom, brushing away the cobwebs and cleaning and scrubbing and making the beds. And I imagine neighbours were there with the equivalent of cups of coffee and shopping and groceries and supplies. And I imagine Ruth going to bed that night and feeling the soft, fresh linen or whatever it was, and anticipating what the morning would hold. A whole new life awaiting her with challenges aplenty. But we will hear about that and what happens to these two women in the next episode of the story of Ruth. Bye for now.